By Dr. Fersing Scott, who is a researcher at Monash University. Doctor, a very good morning to you and welcome to AM News.
Thank you.
Now, the midterm elections, what does it signify and how important is it, first and foremostly?
Well, it signifies a lot. I think the first and foremost is the big significance of the elections was that the American people are, to use the best term, a hutful of American politics. There's been a lot of stalemate over the recent years on various legislations, and I think they've reached a point where they want things to get done, and they're the ones who actually pay the price when the Democrats and Republicans can't agree on key issues.
What does it mean for the incumbent Barack Obama, this midterm election?
Well, his ratings are extremely low. So basically, from my view, he's got two things he could play. He could either start sort of negotiating and working well with the Republican Party, or he can continue down the same path he's been doing the last 6 years, and that's basically been bumping heads with congressmen. And he did speak yesterday, and all indications that he said, well, things will continue as usual, and that was a sort of worrying sign that we'll see another 2 years of things not getting done, and that could affect his legacy if if legislation is not passed and nothing takes place over the next 2 years.
You use a famous South African word, people are hutful for the American politics, but what could this contributing factor be for the failure of the Democrats?
Well, obviously the big talk now is the 2016 election, and Hillary Clinton seems to be the front runner there to take that nomination. And primaries will take place next year, so this could really hurt them in terms of getting the presidential seat. So, in terms of the Republican leaders and who's going to be their nominees, that's still open, but there's people have thrown some of their names through. But if they lose the election 2016, so the Republicans will have control of the Congress and the president, we could see a lot of things that are, things that are passed that are in the favor of the Republican Party rather than the views and the issues and the policies of the Democrats.
So explain this to us, because now the Republicans have got both the Senate and the other house.
Yeah, so basically, just to explain to your viewers, our system is the legislative branch. So the congressmen, the House and the Senate, they actually are supposed to make the laws. So they adopt bills and then pass through. And then what happens is President Obama is the executor. So he's not actually supposed to have any role in legislation at all. He's supposed to sign on the dotted line and veto it if it's really thinks it's necessary. But one of the concerns of the last couple of years, especially with Obamacare, is that he's been getting hands-on into the legislation and bumping heads with Senate majority leaders and others, and saying that's not his role. His role is just he's the executive branch. So that's how things work. So bills get introduced, once it passes there, then it goes to President Obama for the final approval.
Does this then maybe suggest that he'll be a lame duck president for the next 2 years?
Well, that's the concern, because in terms of some of the bigger legislation, nothing really has been done, and it's been the same issues over and over again. We're talking immigration, border security, healthcare obviously has been passed, but there's still some concerns there, and so that's why Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell in your promo said we need to work together on the issues where they actually agree, which are limited, but there's things like trade and investment in infrastructure and the like.
What does that say, the midterm elections, what does it say about elections coming up in the next 2 years, presidential elections, that is?
Yeah, basically, I think what it says is there's going to be a lot of campaigning, but I think Hillary Clinton, I think the Democrats they have to take a step back now. They're extremely worried, and they're going to have to fight, I think, a lot harder than expected because of the thumping they got in these midterm elections. So right now, all the momentum is with the Republican Party, and if Obama and the Congress don't sort of get their act together and get things passed, the American public are going to be even more upset with the Democratic Party. So that gives them a very good chance of taking the presidential election.
Is there a possibility that the Democrats can rebound after this defeat?
I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't think so. It's difficult because most second-term presidents, actually, by the time they're in office 6 years, most people are not happy about a lot of things. Their approval rates typically go down historically over time. And I think they're ready for a change, but I think it's going to be up to Republicans to nominate a leader that the American people can resonate with. And there's been some names put forward, but it's still pretty much an open call. Somebody like Governor Chris Christie from New Jersey and others. So it's still early days in terms of the election, but given the American media, I'm sure they'll start doing the 2016 election coverage very soon, and we'll see a lot of the views and different candidates start putting their hand up and say, I'm running for president.
Those frontrunners that you're talking about, how popular are they with the American public? Christie, for instance.
Quite popular, actually. Chris Christie is a very popular one. There's actually Rand Paul. He's a senator from Kentucky, and he's been doing a lot of campaigning. He's actually, funny enough, from the Tea Party, but he's more sort of middle when it comes more in the typical mainstream Republican views. And he's gathered a lot of momentum and quite popular amongst sort of the average American. And also a very good leader, very good orator. So we could see his name go through. Typically, he gets to sort of the top three, as we saw with the last election, and it narrows down from there. But you know, as the primaries, once we get to that point, things could change dramatically, as we've seen in history.
The midterm elections, a victory for the Republicans.
Definitely. I think victory for the Republicans, also victory for women. There haven't been big news, but this is actually more than 100 female congressmen and women, congresswomen now in the U.S. Congress, which is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the most ever. And we even have the first black female Republican congresswoman, which is very unique, as they typically are part of the Democratic Party. So I'd say Republicans definitely gave a good hiding, and sort of congratulations to the American females and women in politics.
Where would that leave American policy when the Republicans come to power, if that happens?
If the Republicans take the presidential seat, it definitely gives them a lot of flexibility in terms of passing legislation, because when they pass bills, you actually only need 50% for the bills. It's the veto where you need 2/3 majority to. For example, if the president vetoes a certain bill, then Congress needs 2/3 majority to override it, which is quite rare. I think the last time it happened was in about 2007. But when you control the Congress and you control the president, it gives you quite a lot of significant power when it comes to politics.
American foreign policy, will that change dramatically once the Republicans take a seat?
Well, as you know, they're a little bit conservative. They're looking for a stronger hand. The biggest issues in American foreign policy right now is the fight against ISIS in Iraq and Syria, and they're looking for a much stronger role rather than just aerial bombardment. They're actually talking about troops, and they're not happy with Obama's leadership. They think they could have a stronger role, stronger hand in the region. And also, they're a little bit concerned about the lack of U.S. leadership in Europe. And with President Putin, they think that Russia's got a one-up on the U.S. and has made the Americans look weak, and that's one thing the Republicans do not like. They like to see the U.S. sort of be the leader that they're known to be, and get heavily involved militarily. So they could see a big change in legislation like we saw during the Bush era, and also policy and action when it comes to involvement in the Middle East and Europe.
Could there be a turnaround on the Obama strategy in terms of Obamacare when the Republicans come to power?
I don't think so. I think that time has passed, and a lot of the congressmen, I think, don't want to beat on a dead horse. There's some Republicans that are adamant, saying that we need to repeal Obamacare, but I think a lot of them say let it lie, perhaps some adjustments and so on. But let's work with what we have, and maybe perhaps we can make some changes. I think they want to sort of leave that alone and focus on other issues like climate change, energy, trade, and border controls are another big issue. And
then just finally, Doctor, a bumpy ride, I think, in the next couple of years for Obama then?
I think so. Well, again, it's in his ball's in his court now. So depending how he plays it, but I hope he'll be a lot more sort of considering and understanding of the politicians' issues, and things actually get done. So fingers crossed that we don't have the usual politics as usual in Washington.
Doctor, thank you so much for coming and joining us here on
You're very
AIM News.
welcome.
That was Dr. Fersing Scott, researcher at Monash.